Hey guys, this is Christian and today I've got something really exciting to show you. This is my new smart home system I've built with Home Assistant. It controls all of my smart devices at my home, like turning lights on and off, adjust the brightness and color, get data from sensors, override custom automations and integration scripts. It's running on a small computer here in my Homelab, so this little thing controls all of the devices. And the best, there is no need for any vendor-locked Zigbee bridges anymore. I completely got rid of my old Philips Hue and my Bosch Smart Home System bridge because I've replaced it with this little USB gateway. And in this video, I'd like to show you exactly what you need to get this working yourself. We also talk a bit about the joys and the struggles of Zigbee Gateways and Protocols. So I hope you're as excited as I am. Let's dive together into the amazing world of smart home and IoT. Okay, so as this is the very first video about smart home here on this channel, I want to start at the beginning, so you can easily follow along if you want to build such a system yourself. And be sure this won't be the last video about smart home, because the very first thing that I've learned during this project was smart home is a much more vast and complex field than I thought it would be. It's crazy what all came up in the recent years in the smart home and IoT world. All of the protocols and applications we're fighting with, or the increasing collection of various devices from different manufacturers. It's just a complete and utter mess. And when I started my smart home journey a couple of years ago, I just wanted to keep it simple, so I was just buying some devices from some of the popular manufacturers out there, like Philips Hue, which by the way is an amazing system to control smart home devices like lights, switches and motion sensors. And over time I just added more and more devices to my smart home setup. I also experimented with other vendors like the Bosch Smart Home System, some thermostats, humidity sensors, a robot vacuum and so on. And of course I wanted to control all of these devices with voice assistants to write some custom automations. I'm using Amazon Echoes in nearly all of the rooms here. But the problem that I ran into was when you're buying a lot of smart home devices from many different vendors, they all kind of have their own ways and systems and implementations, like they have their own bridges or they have their own apps to control things, and you might end up having like 5 or 6 different apps on your phone to control all of this stuff. Not all of them work great with each other and voice assistants, and that's why I wanted to have a new smart home system that I could easily self-host in my Homelab and that was able to control and connect all of the devices from different vendors. That's why I got started with Home Assistant. And guys, I can just tell you, this is such an amazing application and it exactly does everything that you're looking for when you love to tinker with home labs and smart home. Home Assistant is an open source home automation platform that you can easily self-host, and it allows you to control and automate various smart devices in your home. It supports a wide range of devices and services, from smart lights to thermostats, and even offers some advanced features such as voice control or machine learning. Home Assistant currently has over 1,900 integrations available. That is very impressive, and it just looks absolutely incredible. For example, this is one of the dashboards of my Home Assistant installation. Here you can see I've connected a couple of different sensors that measure the temperature in some of the rooms. I also have connected all of my Philips Hue lights to turn them on and off, adjust the brightness and so on. And I've also written a few automation scenes, so these control multiple devices at once, whether I want to create a cozy atmosphere for movie nights or set up a routine that help me fall asleep. You can really do so much with this tool. One of the coolest things in Home Assistant is that you can customize this entire system, like this whole dashboard here. There are so many integrations, cards and themes available for it, so you can really change every single button in here to make it look like exactly what you want. Of course, it also supports third-party integrations, community themes and plugins. I even don't know where to start, but yeah, maybe let me just show you how it works on my system. I'm running Home Assistant on this small computer here. So that's, by the way, the Zigbee board, which I've shown you in a previous video here on this channel. It's actually pretty cool for this task because it's a teeny fanless device that doesn't consume much power, so I can easily run this 24/7. And instead of a Raspberry Pi, which is an ARM-based system, the Zigbee board is a real x86 CPU port computer, so it does support nearly all of the hardware devices and operating systems you like to run on it. And if you want to buy one, you can find it on my personal kit page with a direct link to Amazon that also supports Nearbit if you're using that. However, technically, you can run Home Assistant on nearly anything that you like. It can be a Zigbee board, but also a Raspberry Pi. Or you could run it in a virtual machine on one of your home servers. It even supports running in Docker containers. And Home Assistant has some really great guides and installation tutorials for all of these different options on their homepage. I will put you a link in the description of this video. But just to show you how I've installed Home Assistant on my Zigbee board, this is the Ubuntu Linux operating system that I'm running on it. And here I've created a new project folder for Home Assistant, and in this folder I have a Docker Compose file that deploys the latest version of Home Assistant into a small Docker container. Here we also have a config directory that I'm using as a persistent volume to store all the relevant config files and data for Home Assistant. This is great because then I can easily make any changes to the YAML configuration files in here without having to go into the container's file system first. If we go back and take a look at this compose file, there I've defined all the necessary instructions to start Home Assistant in a Docker container. Like, this is the persistent volume that mounts the config directory from the host inside the container's file system. I'm also using another volume to mount the Zigbee Gateway device that I'm using on this computer that controls all of the Zigbee compatible smart home devices. More about that in a few minutes. And of course, I'm also using traffic to expose this web service of Home Assistant with trusted TLS certificates on my home network. I know if you're not so familiar with self-hosting and Docker, this might sound all a bit overwhelming, and because of traffic, the installation steps might be a bit more complex, but I thought it doesn't make so much sense to go through this installation here step by step, because there are so many other different ways to install Home Assistant, and what might work great for me does not automatically work great for you. So I would absolutely recommend checking out the official installation guides on the Home Assistant website. There are many different options you can choose from, and I'm pretty sure you'll find something in here that fits well into your environment. However, if you like Docker and you like my setups a lot, you can also look up the compose file of my Home Assistant installation as an example. I've added it to my boilerplates repository on GitHub, link also in the description. But yeah, that's it about my setup of Home Assistant. If you have finished the installation, you can just open the web interface in your browser, and it first will guide you through some general setup process where you have to do things like adding your location, defining some other things, adding your user and so on. I think I don't need to walk you through this because it's all pretty straightforward. And once you have done that, you will see the main dashboard of Home Assistant. In the left sidebar, you have all of the menus like the map, the logbook, history, media files, developer tools and settings. Don't forget to turn on dark mode in your profile section, of course. And then you probably should start to explore the settings menu of Home Assistant first, as this is where you can set up all of the config things like adding your devices and services, automations and scenes, areas, dashboards. Don't worry, we will get into some of this stuff here in a second. I just want to say at this point, Home Assistant is really huge. It's impossible to cover it in a single video, and it's not really a plug-and-play solution as you might know it from most of the other popular vendors. Like Philips Hue is just incredibly easy to set up. You just download an app on your phone, add the devices through a guided wizard, and it all just magically works. In Home Assistant, that's not the case because it is so customizable and it has tons and tons of features. But I still like to show you a couple of things that I've done to get started with and how I'm controlling all of the smart home devices with Home Assistant, because that's what you typically would want to do with it. So the first thing that I've tried was to integrate my existing smart home system in Home Assistant by going into devices and services and adding a new integration, and then I just searched for the particular system I wanted to control, and that works pretty well with most of the popular systems out there. Like Philips Hue, for example, was very easy to add in Home Assistant. You just need to fill in the IP address of your Philips Hue bridge, connect to the system, and then you automatically see all your connected devices in Home Assistant, ready to be used. If you're using a different vendor, like I was also using the Bosch smart home system, this also can be found here. And yeah, just like that, you can find all of the compatible integrations on the Home Assistant website. Yeah, that's a huge list, so most of the popular stuff that is around is very likely present in here. The exact steps how to integrate your particular system might be a bit different for every vendor, of course, but as I said, integrating them is mostly pretty straightforward, and that's also the easiest way to add all your existing smart home devices to Home Assistant. However, the problem with this approach is that you still need the bridges from the vendors to connect to your devices, and you also need to add and manage the devices itself through the vendor-specific applications and not directly in Home Assistant. So that means for controlling Philips Hue, you still need the Philips Hue bridge and the app on your phone, and the more vendors you have in your smart home system, the more bridges, the more apps you're gonna need. That doesn't really solve one of the problems I had, because I wanted to use Home Assistant to get rid of all of this stuff. But luckily there is of course another option I've tried out, and that seemed to work pretty well so far, because what you can also do is you simply unpair your existing smart home devices from the vendor locked bridges and add them directly to Home Assistant by using a gateway. For example, if you have smart home devices that use the Zigbee protocol, you can buy a Zigbee gateway which allows you to connect many off-the-shelf based devices. Not all, that's very important to mention, but the support is very broad, and most of the popular devices from manufacturers like Philips Hue, for example, they work pretty well with these Zigbee gateways you can get for Home Assistant. And then you don't even need the official Philips Hue bridges or the apps anymore. That's all possible because Zigbee is a standardized wireless communication protocol based on an IEEE standard, and it does have a couple of interesting capabilities like stealth configuration, self-healing, or mesh networking. That's, by the way, the reason why Zigbee devices are generally a bit faster and, in my opinion, more reliable than any Wi-Fi connected smart home devices. If you want to know which Zigbee devices exactly you can pair with these Zigbee gateways in Home Assistant, you should take a look at the Zigbee device compatibility repository, link also in the description. And yeah, just go through that list, you'll find a lot of great devices in here, and depending on which type of gateway software you want to use, you can exactly see whether your device would work without a vendor-specific bridge or not. Now, your next question is probably, wait a second, so what the hell does that mean, gateway software? Well, the Zigbee gateways that you can buy for Home Assistant, these are just the physical devices. The one that I bought, for example, is the Con B2 made by Dresden Electronic. This just looks like a small USB stick you can plug into your computer, but Home Assistant also has a good documentation on their website with some of the other common physical gateways that are supported and that you can buy. But these devices alone, they are just dumb, so they don't know how to talk to your devices, and that's why we also need to run a gateway software. This part provides all the necessary protocols and functionality to control and manage the devices, and it allows an easy integration into Home Assistant, at least in theory. And just like you can imagine, there are also a couple of different gateway softwares around that you can use with different physical devices, like for example there's Zigbee to MQTT, Decons or ZHA, and both the physical devices and the software gateways, they are all a bit different. Some have slightly different capabilities and support for different devices, so that I myself was fighting quite some time with that, trying to use different gateway softwares with my ConB2 gateway. Please take this with caution, yeah, I can't really tell you if that's the best option out there or if you should pick something else. But if you just want to know how I got this working, I just plugged in the ConB2 USB device into my Zima board, and because I'm running Home Assistant in Docker, I also needed to pass this USB device into the container's file system by adding this line here in the compose file. That simply passes through the ACM0 interface where ConB2 is connected to into the container. If you're using a different gateway or a different system, it might of course look a bit different, but you probably should then refer to the official documentation of your specific device and software. Anyway, once I had done that, I just needed to enable the ZHA gateway software that is, by the way, built directly into Home Assistant, so you don't need to install or add another container for it. This can be activated with just a short line in the configuration.yaml file of Home Assistant you should find in the config directory once you first started up the container. And after that, it all worked magically. I just restarted the container, then Home Assistant was able to find the ConB2 gateway as a new integration I could add in the settings menu, and this is how it finally looks like. No, I get it, this is a lot of information and it also took me quite some time to understand how this all works together, but as I said, it allows you to get rid of any vendor-locked Zigbee bridges, which sometimes comes with its own problems, agreed, but it also has a lot of advantages, like you can add all the devices through Home Assistant itself, you don't need to install a vendor-specific app, or you don't need to sign up on a shady cloud service. You really have all the freedom you need, and you can choose from any compatible smart home device, no matter what the manufacturer, as long as your physical gateway speaks the same protocol and the gateway software has the right support built for that device. It should work. And because the community of Home Assistant and the gateway softwares like ZHA are constantly adding new devices, even some of the cheaper smart home brands are added in here, you have tons and tons of options to do some really cool things. Let me just show you how that looks like in my Home Assistant installation. So if you got your gateway connected in here, if it shows up, you have done the hardest part and you can now start connecting your smart home devices. If you already have a smart home devices connected to one of your vendor locked bridges, you need to unpair it and make sure it's in pairing mode again. The same is of course also true for new devices. And then you just need to go into the devices page and add a new device. Select your desired integration, like this is my Zigbee gateway where I want to connect that to, and then it turns on the discovery mode. When your device is in range and it's in pairing mode, it should be automatically connected and show up in this page here. Note that you don't need to accept this somehow, so when the tab is green, that means the device is already connected to Home Assistant, and we can just give this device a new name to easily identify it and add it to an area. So that's like for the different rooms where the device is located. After that, you can go back and you should see your device as part of the device list in here. This is how my devices currently look like. You can see I got a lot of stuff connected in here already. And let's, for example, just open this one here. This is a Philips Hue light that is located in my office. And this page gives you all the information about the device, that this is connected to my ConB2 gateway, which firmware this device has, and you can also see if you have added this device to any automations, scenes or scripts. That's currently not the case with this light here, but it has a control entity, so this is where you can access the specific capabilities and features of your devices, like turning this light on and off, adjust the brightness, and yeah, depending on what type your device is, you have more or less entities for it. Like when you have a sensor that measures humidity and temperature, you would have two different entries, like with this device here, for example. And you should probably spend some time figuring out yourself how this system works. It's actually very interesting, and you can also go into the entity section in Home Assistant to get a list of all these different entities that your devices are capable of. And and you can control in Home Assistant. Of course, you can also filter it here and search for something specific. What might also be useful to know is when you have a lot of devices that you need to control at once, you can also group them together. So you just need to go into the helper section, create a new helper, select group from that list, and then you can add multiple lights as members of a single group. And when you save this, you can just use this group to turn them all on and off at the same time, adjust the brightness of all of them, and yeah, whatever capabilities your devices add. But of course, you don't want to control your devices always from that settings menu. That's not really comfortable. So you should also add your entities to one of the dashboards in Home Assistant. And the dashboards are really one of the coolest features here because, yeah, just I've shown you in the beginning of this video, you can customize so many things in here. Just to show you some examples, so this is my Home Assistant main dashboard. This contains a few cards for light control in some of the rooms. It also does have some other integrations and shows a weather map in here. It also gives me the temperature of some of the rooms, and it has some scenes that I'm currently testing. As you can see, I'm not finally done with all of this setup yet, and I'm still migrating some of the devices that are still connected to my vendor bridges to the Con V2 gateway in here. But just to demonstrate how it will work, let's for a second go and create a new card in this dashboard here. First, we need to click on the top menu and edit the whole dashboard. Now we can change anything inside the dashboard, like removing or adding things. Now we want to add a new card in here. That's what we want to do. And depending on what type of entities you want to control or visualize on this dashboard, you can select from various types of cards. Like you can use a button to control light bulbs or some other automation scenes. You could use a light card, so that is very useful for any light. You can even add a markdown file in here or add any pictures. You could add a sensor to measure the humidity or temperature. Yeah, you can add all sorts of different things to your dashboard. If you want to add third-party or custom plugins, they will also show up here. I think it wouldn't make much sense to go through each and every card type in here. You just need to try it out yourself. Yeah, just experiment what you can do with it and which card might be the best for which type of device you have. Maybe just start with a very simple thing like add a tile. So that is what I personally like the most for controlling my lights. First, you need to select their specific entity. So let's select one of my office lights, and you can immediately see what that card would look like. You can also customize the appearance, like give it a different color, customize some of the actions when you click on this element, or maybe for the lights, it's also pretty cool to add a new feature in here like adjusting the light brightness. So this gives you a nice slider on your tile that you can easily use to adjust that. Again, just play around with it, try out a couple of things. For now, let's save this one, and then you can see I just added this new card to my dashboard. I can click on it to turn the lights on and off and adjust the brightness with the slider. Yeah, this is so nice. And yeah, that's basically how you have to build all of your dashboards in Home Assistant. I admit it can be a lot of work depending on how many devices you have, but I just like the fact that you can customize each and every single aspect of this dashboard. I've already seen some people managing their entire Homelabs with this, like they have a graph for DNS requests or connect it with an integration to Pi-hole and so on. So you can really do so much in Home Assistant, especially when you're running Homelabs. And for me, this is absolutely amazing. What I've shown you is just a fraction of all the possibilities and how I easily got started with it. To be honest with you, I wouldn't call myself now a smart home expert. Yeah, I'm still experimenting and learning about this whole topic. But for what I've achieved, I'm pretty happy and also a bit proud of that I found out how it all works together. I think some of the next important topics we might dive into are infrared and radio frequency devices and see how to integrate these type of systems, or maybe show you some of the automations and voice assistant integrations I'm currently working on. If you're up for this, please let me know what you'd like to see next in the comments. I'm very excited to make more smart home and IoT content for you guys, and meanwhile just play a bit around with Home Assistant, try out a few things yourself, and share your project, of course, on our Discord community. As always, thank you so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.